Welcome back, folks, for a new episode of Leaked. And today we'll cover upcoming Tier 8 Premium Russian Medium Tank. It is the T-44-100. So it's basically a T-44 with side skirts. Yep, that's pretty much it. Disappointment is rising. Guys, come on, it's a T-44 with side skirts. It's a normal looking tank. It's not as interesting as a KV-4, KTTS, or T-28 concept. It's a normal looking tanks with side skirts attached to them. And you're selling them as premium tanks? That kind of sucks, but if it's a personal mission reward for the next season, I guess it's okay. I mean, it's not as interesting, right? So, oh well. But here's a little history about the development process between the T-34s into the T-54s. So originally, the T-44s were developed around the same time that T-34s were about to carry the 85mm gun, so becoming the T-34-85s. The T-44s have better armor and a faster mobility, but the Russians chose to produce more of the T-34-85s. They introduced the T-44s because Zerg tactics. So the T-44s were never put into combat, but they were made about 2,000 units of these tanks. Now, there were 3 generations of the T-44s. The first generation has the 85mm gun that's on the Su-85, the D5T, and one version has the D25-44T, which is the 122mm on the ISU-122S. So 3 prototypes for the first generation. They figured that out, that the 122mm was big and too cramped for the crew. So the rate of fire is about 3 rounds per minute, and the shell was huge to carry around the turret and load. So this version of the prototype was scrapped. It was not as effective. They tried out with the 85mm on this version of the tank. They liked it, but the firepower was basically the same as a T-34-85. So why introduce something new when you already have a very good T-34-85s? So this tank was put on hold. The second generation is fixing the hull design of the tank, because as you can see right here, the driver position has this box shape and it's a weak spot, and the driver constantly gets splashed in the face when the tank crosses rivers or other stuff. So they modified the crew compartment, modified the turret, and that's the second generation of the tank. But both generations have 75mm at the front of the hull and 90mm on the turret with 500 horsepower. So it was somewhat decent upgrade to the T-34-85, but not that much. And this version of the tank, the third generation, is the T-44-100. So they start mounting the Su-100's D10 gun onto this tank. The T-44s with the side skirts and 100mm gun are the third generation of the T-44s. These tanks were better armored and better mobility-wise in comparison to the first 2 generations. Now, there were 2 different types of the third generation of T-44s. The first generation, called T-44As, has 90mm of frontal hull armor and 120mm of turret armor. So this is the actual T-44 in the game. Now, the second version, the T-44B, has 120mm on the hull and 180mm on the turret. So this is more close to the T-54 prototype. But yeah, that's when the T-54 prototype was introduced, and the T-44 was an intermediate step between the T-34-85s and the T-54s. So the T-44s actually never made it, and they start developing the T-54s, and that's the history in a nutshell for you. So apparently we're getting the T-44A version of the tank with side skirts right here. It's not the T-44B like the T-54 prototype. So imagine the T-54 prototype with side skirts, and that's the T-44B. Yeah, confusing. There's a lot of tanks, and we have a lot of clones of the T-54, or looks like the T-54, like the Chinese WZs, the WZ-131. 132, 120, which is the Type 59, the Type 62. We also have two versions of unreleased premium tanks at Tier 7 for the Russians, the T-44-122 and the T-44-85, which are the first generation of the T-44s. You can check those out with Tank Inspector, but they never released it. So, yeah, it's a long history with this tank and very interesting too. But concept-wise, it's a normal-looking tank, and we already have a lot of them. So, yeah, it's not as crazy looking as a KV-4 KTTS or a T-28 concept. So, womp womp womp. And here are the in-game models of the T-44-100. As you can see, it's basically a T-44 with side skirts. I mean, the turret is a little bit different, more like the T-54 prototype, but this is the T-44A version of the tank, so it's closer to the T-44 in the game, with 90mm on the frontal hull and 120 on the turret. So, yeah, if you could have the T-54 prototype with side skirts, that would be much better, but why does it not have side skirts on the T-54 prototype? Oh well. But it's Russian tank, so classic Russian design. There's no splashboard on this vehicle, like the little bar right here to prevent the water from splashing into the driver's face. That's what the splashboard is for. But yeah, there were two versions, one with splashboard and one didn't. So this is not the one, I guess. But it's not as interesting as the KV-4, yeah, or KTTS. So it's generic Russian tank design, bland. It does have a dushka, so that's good. The prototype does not have a dushka, so that's disappointing. But what can you do? And here are the early renders and collision models of the T-44-100. So yeah, it's a T-44 in the game. Now, what is interesting about this picture right here is that this tank has 100mm of side armor. I don't think the T-44 in the game has 100mm of side armor. It might have around like 75, but 100mm of side armor with 6mm of space armor or side skirts means that this thing will bounce if you side scrape and play this thing like a heavy tank. So that's pretty much better than the T-44, but this tank is a little bit slower. So we'll go over the stats, but it's like an intermediate step between the T-44 and the T-54 prototype. So you have this thing. Okay. Yeah, rear armor is okay, but it's a medium tank, so it could shift. Turret armor is 120mm all the way around, so that's mostly fair, or almost 100mm at the back, so that's fair. And here are the main stats for the T-44-100. So it's going to be a premium Tier 8 Russian medium tank, so it's going to cost you around, I say, 8,500 gold if it's sold in the gift shop. The T-54 prototype is 800 or 8,750, something around there, but that's fairly cheap, quote unquote, for a Tier 8 premium tank, because the average is about 10,000 gold. So, okay. Hit points, 1,350. Adequate. Decent enough. It's 50 more than the Type 59, so, okay. Engine power is classic 520. Weighs about 33.5 tons. So the power to weight ratio is Russian 15.52. Now you might say that this is not good power to weight ratio, but if you have driven the T62A and the Object 140, those two tanks have low horsepower per ton ratio in comparison to the rest, like the Leopard or the Patents, but they have better terrain resistance, so that compensates and balances it out. So this tank is like that in essence. Top speed is 52 kilometers per hour, reverse is 20, so decently fast if you rev up. Hull traverse is fast, 50.1 degrees per second. Turret traverse is 44 degrees per second. So this thing is faster to shift than the T-54 prototype, but that's a given. Terrain resistance is mediocre, medium-ish, 0.86 for hard, 1.05 for medium, and 1.8 for soft. So that's average. View range is 380 meters, average. Radio range is above standard, or standard, 700 meters. So, okay, it's like the T-44. Hull armor is 90 at the front, 75 at the sides, and 45 at the rear. Wait, I thought this was 100 millimeters based on the picture. Oh, you guys lying to me? Oh, don't lie to me. That looks like 100 millimeters on the sides. Okay, never mind, it's 75 millimeters. So it's exactly like the T-44-100. Or exactly like the T-44. I thought it was 100 millimeters on the sides and it could be like a better skyscraper than the T-44. But nope, it's not. Oh well. So turret armor is 120 at the front, 100 at the sides, and 100 at the rear. So armor-wise, it's basically a T-44 with side skirts. I thought it has better side armor. Apparently not. Boo. Okay, the gun is a 100mm gun with AP, APCR, and high explosive. Has 175 millimeters of penetration for normal AP, 235 for APCR, 250 alpha, which is standard for Tier VIII mediums. Rate of fire is 7.7 rounds per minute. DPM is about 2,000 or so. You can increase that to 2,200, I believe, with the gun rammer and vents. Reloads every 7.7 seconds. Gun depression is 7 degrees, which is surprising for a Russian tank. So that's actually pretty good. Elevation is 23 degrees per second. Good. Accuracy is better than Russian guns, 0.336. Aim time is 2.11 seconds. So, yeah. Very good accuracy, surprisingly, for the gun because it's Russian and generally you have 0.35 accuracy, so that's pretty decent. But armor wise, it's just a T-44 with side skirts, and yeah, is it worth it? Yeah, we'll discuss that later, but it's not as interesting. And let's compare the T-44-100 with the normal version at Tier 8. So armor wise, it's pretty much the same, other than the side skirts for the T-44-100. Now, it does help with side scraping, and you could have about 200 to 230-ish millimeters effective or auto bounce for the side panels. But remember, this side panel does not cover the tank entirely. And what that means is that this panel right here is separated from the hull by the width of the tracks. So it's not sticking to the hull like Super Pershing. So they could shoot you right here, this diagonal line into your side armor, and it will penetrate if you're side scraping. So don't expose this part of your tank when you're side scraping. But yeah, it does help with the side scraping parts. Frontal armor is the same, turret armor is the same. So if you played the T-44, the T-44 is not known for armor. It could troll a few shots, but you have to rely on the speed to throw off your opponent's shots. But let's get to the other stats for these two tanks. So health is 50 more, but still below average. Engine power is lower than the normal one, so the power to weight ratio is a lot worse. That's really different. 15.52 in comparison to 20.03. Yeah, that's rough. And it's not helped much by the terrain resistance change. It does have better terrain resistance than the normal T-44, but it's not that big of a difference between the power to weight ratio. So this thing will feel slower. Top speed is pretty much the same by 1 kilometer per hour. Hull traverse is faster though by 6 degrees per second. So that's good. Alright, turret traverse is slower. Wait, did they get mixed up between the turret traverse And the hull traverse, yeah, this switched. The turret traverse and hull traverse got switched around. Is it a bug in translation, or it should be the same, right? It probably should be the same. There might be a bug between the translation and the translator forgot to switch these two around, or maybe the stats got mixed up. But yeah, you have inverted degrees per second between the hull and turret traverse of these two tanks. That's kind of funny. But terrain resistance is better than the normal one, but it doesn't counterbalance the crazy difference between the power to weight ratio. So yeah, view range is the same and below average. Radio range is 30 less, but it's standard. Anything above 700 is good. Anything above 600 is pretty decent. Below that is starting to get iffy. Hull armor and turret armor is the same. And let's compare the gun, because that's a very big factor. So penetration is the same, but below average. Same alpha. DPM's the same. Reload's the same. Gun depression is the same. Gun elevation, oh my god, guys, come on. Accuracy is the same. Aim time is a little bit better. It's the same goddamn vehicle. I thought the stats were different than the actual T-44, but basically you messed up on the turret and hull traverse with crappier engine, but slightly better terrain resistance. The gun's the same. I don't know what to say. It's the same vehicle with side skirts and a crappier engine. What? I'm confused, confuzzled. And the final opinion about the T-44-100 is that this vehicle is basically a T-44 with side skirts to compensate for a crappier engine. And that's pretty much it. Why does it exist? Now, if it's going to be a personal mission reward, I guess that's fine. But if it's being sold in the gift shop, that's really tragic, guys. It's not as interesting as a KV4, KTTS, or T28 concept. So it's basically a T44 with side skirts and a crappier engine. And that's pretty much it. Well, it's in HD. Ooh. Ugh. Yeah. This vehicle is not that interesting. So, would you buy it for 8,500 gold? Let's say. You could just play the T44 and be done with it. Or you could buy something useful like a Super Pershing and smash face. But yeah, the armor is not going to be that good. And the T-54 prototype, that vehicle, I originally thought the T-54 prototype was going to be a Type 59-esque of a tank for normal pubbies or normal players. But after playing with it, it's not that bouncy. And the gun is okay, but you can only carry 34 rounds. So yeah, the T-54 prototype is alright, but it's no Super Pershing. The amount of face smashing and seal clubbing could do with the Super Persh is crazy. But is it worth to buy a T-44-100? In my opinion, just play the T-44, because you might as well have a T-54 anyways and an Object 140. So you probably will play the T-44. And I kept my T-44 because I like the speed. It's fast. The 20 horsepower per ton ratio is crazy good with the Troyish armor a little bit, but this vehicle is not that fast. So, bleh. Yeah, it's not really worth it. So, in essence, to all these clones of the T-54 and T-44s, so tanks like the WZs, the Type 59s, the Type 62s, the other tanks, the T-54 lightweight, and yeah, all tanks look the same. This is the pure example of clone wars that you're ever going to come across, and it's it's leaving a bad taste in my mouth. So what is a good example of a clone war or clone-esque of a tank that's based on the tanks already in the game. So I want to see this tank for a long time, and I doubt it will ever make it to the live server or even to the test server, which is this T-54, the M1973 Coxswain. Yeah, it's a 170mm gun on a T-54 chassis. This is the most interesting tank, or interesting clone, in essence, than a T-44-100, right? So this thing is basically the best Waffenträger you're going to find. This vehicle is currently in use by North Korea and Iran, I believe, but it's a modification to a T-54 with a Jagdpanzer E-100. This will be amazing tier 10. That would be crazy. It would be so sneaky with 1000 alpha. That's amazing. But yeah, compare this to a T-44-100. You can see the amount of effort in these two, just so dramatically different. But yeah, hopefully I'll do a what if video about this vehicle. But this is probably the best Waffenträger E-100 replacement you're going to get, but I doubt it. So it's not the Waffenträger off T-54. But thank you guys for watching this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.